I stood at the edge of the mountain road, watching Graham unlock the heavy wooden door of what looked more like a fortress than a bathhouse. Stone walls rose from the pine-covered slope, dark windows reflecting nothing but sky. 47 years, I said, adjusting my coat against the October wind. You've never surprised me like this. He turned the key with deliberate care. That's exactly the point, Amelia. The scent of cedar and something else, herbs, maybe sage, drifted from inside. I'd laughed when he first mentioned his theories about desire and boundaries. Psychology fascination, I'd called it. Academic curiosity from a man who'd spent decades studying human behavior. I've arranged everything, he'd said 3 days ago over breakfast, the same tone he used to announce faculty meetings. Now I followed him through the entrance, past carved benches, and into a reception area where warm stone met polished wood. The silence felt deliberate, expectant. Graham, I touched his shoulder. What exactly is everything? He set down a leather satchel, pulled out a folder of papers, rental agreements, liability waivers, something that looked like a schedule. His movements precise, clinical, the same way he organized his research. 5 men will arrive at 8, he said. They understand the parameters, no names, no conversation beyond necessity. They'll leave by midnight. My breath caught. You're serious? Completely. He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Not uncertainty. Graham never showed uncertainty. Something deeper. Hunger, maybe, or hope. And you'll be where? Watching. He gestured toward what I now noticed was a mirrored wall, tinted dark. If you want to stop, you say stop. If you want to continue. He left it hanging. I walked to the glass, pressed my palm against its surface. My reflection stared back, distorted by steam that hadn't yet begun to rise. Settling on the robe when I heard their settling on the robe when I heard their voices. 5 men entered like they belonged here. No introductions, no awkward glances. The youngest maybe 35. The oldest perhaps my age. They moved with quiet purpose toward the benches along the stone walls. The heat had begun to build. Steam rose from hidden vents, carrying that herbal scent deeper into the room. I found myself breathing it in, letting it settle in my lungs. One approached, tall, silver at his temples, hands that looked like they knew their work. He stopped just close enough that I could smell soap and something like pine on his skin. May I? He gestured toward my wrist. I nodded, not trusting my voice. His fingers found my pulse point, gentle but certain. The touch sent something electric up my arm. Behind him, the others had begun to shed their clothes with matter-of-fact efficiency. No performance, no display. Just bodies becoming comfortable in the rising heat. I glanced toward the darkened glass where I knew Graham stood watching. The reflection showed only shapes now, figures moving through clouds of vapor that grew thicker by the minute. The man at my wrist leaned closer. Breathe, he said quietly. Let the steam do its work. What followed happened in layers, like the mist itself. Hands that asked permission with touch. Breath that mixed with mine. The stone walls holding our sounds while the heat built around us, through us. I lost track of who was who, which touch belonged to whom. They moved like water, like the steam itself, present and then shifting, always gentle, always asking. When it was over, or when that phase was over, I lay against the warm stone, breathing hard, skin slick with moisture and something else. The room had gone quiet except for the hiss of steam from the vents. The men dressed and left as quietly as they'd arrived. No lingering, no awkward aftermath. Just the sound of the heavy door closing and car engines fading down the mountain road. I sat wrapped in the robe, watching steam dissipate from the vents. The silence felt different now, not expectant, but complete. Graham emerged from behind the glass, carrying 2 glasses and a bottle I recognized from our anniversary dinner 5 years ago. The good vintage we'd been saving. "How do you feel?" He poured carefully, the liquid catching what light remained from the overhead fixtures. "Different." I accepted the glass, surprised by how steady my hands were. Not guilty, not ashamed, just different. He sat beside me on the stone bench, close enough that our knees touched. "I watched you discover something." "What did you see?" I sipped the drink, tasted oak and thyme and something bittersweet. "You stopped performing." He turned his glass between his palms. "For the first time in years, maybe decades, you stopped trying to be what you thought I needed you to be." That stung because it was true. I'd spent so long being the faculty wife, the department host, the woman who smiled at the right moments and asked the right questions. "And what about you?" I studied his profile in the dim light. "What did you discover watching your wife with 5 strangers?" "That I love you more than I understood." He met my eyes. "And that I've been afraid of that love for too long." We finished our drinks in silence. The taste lingered, complex and challenging. Outside, wind moved through the pines with a sound like distant conversation. "We can't unknow this," I said finally. "No." He took my empty glass, set both on the floor beside us. "We can't." "Good." The word surprised me as I spoke it. "I don't want to unknow it." He nodded, and I saw something relax in his shoulders. Relief, maybe, or recognition. I woke before dawn in the small bedroom attached to the bathhouse. Graham slept beside me, one arm flung across the space where I'd been lying. Through the window, mountains emerged from shadow, like developing photographs. In the bathroom, I studied my face in the mirror above the sink. Same lines around my eyes, same silver threading through my hair. But something in my expression had shifted. A directness I hadn't seen in years. The woman looking back at me had made a choice, had crossed a line many would never understand, had discovered something about herself that couldn't be taken back. I liked her. Downstairs, I made coffee with supplies Graham had brought, stood at the window watching sunrise paint the stone walls gold. The bathhouse looked different in daylight, less fortress, more sanctuary. "Any regrets?" Graham's voice from the doorway, rough with sleep. I handed him a mug, considered the question seriously. "About last night?" "No." "About the years we spent dancing around what we really wanted?" "Yes." He joined me at the window. I kept thinking about control, how much I needed it, how much I feared losing it. And now? Now I think control was the wrong word entirely. He sipped his coffee, grimaced at the strength. Trust, that's what I was really afraid of. We watched a hawk circle the valley below, riding thermals with wings spread wide, effortless and precise and completely committed to the air that held it. "The men," I said, "how did you find them?" "Through colleagues, discreet colleagues." He set down his mug. "Men who understand boundaries in psychology, who could participate without complications." "You studied this, planned it like research?" "For months." He turned to face me fully. "I needed to know it would be safe, that it would be about discovery, not damage. I reached for his hand, found it warm and familiar. What did you learn? That watching you become yourself, your truest self, was the most erotic thing I've ever experienced. His fingers tightened around mine. And that I've been a fool to think desire was something to manage instead of something to explore. We walked the mountain trails that morning, following paths that wound between pine and aspen. The air carried autumn's bite, clean and sharp in our lungs. "Tell me what you need now," Graham said as we paused beside a stream running clear over granite stones. The question caught me off guard. In 47 years of marriage, he'd rarely asked what I needed. What I wanted, yes. What would make me happy, certainly. But need felt more fundamental. "Honesty," I said without thinking. "From both of us." He picked up a smooth stone, turned it in his palm. "I need to know I didn't damage us." "You didn't." I sat on a fallen log, patted the space beside me. "But I need to understand why. Really why." He joined me, still holding the stone. "I've spent my career studying human behavior, patterns, motivations, the psychology of relationships, but I'd never applied that curiosity to us." "So last night was an experiment?" "No." He threw the stone into the stream, watched it disappear beneath the surface. "Last night was me finally admitting that I've been aroused by the idea of sharing you for years. Decades, maybe." The honesty hit like cold water. "You never said." "How could I? The faculty wife doesn't hear about her husband's fantasies involving other men. The department social coordinator doesn't get told her husband masturbates thinking about her with strangers." I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but not from shame, from recognition. "I've had dreams," I said quietly, "about being watched, about being desired by multiple people while you watched." "Really?" "For years. I thought it meant something was wrong with me." I looked at the water moving over stones, constant and purposeful. Maybe it just meant I was married to the right person. He laughed, the sound echoing off the mountain walls. "Maybe we've both been overthinking this." "Probably." I stood, brushed bark from my jeans. "But I need one more thing." "What?" "I need to know this wasn't just about your fantasy, that you saw me last night, really saw me." He rose, took my hands in both of his. "I saw a woman I'd forgotten existed, strong and sensual and completely present. I saw the person I fell in love with before we learned to be careful." That evening, we returned to the bathhouse one final time before heading home. The stones still held warmth from the day's sun, and Graham had brought the rest of the bottle from the night before. "A toast," he said, pouring the last of the vintage into our glasses. "To discoveries." "To courage," I countered. We drank, and this time, the bittersweet taste seemed exactly right. Complex, challenging, but ultimately satisfying. "What happens when we go back?" I asked. "Faculty dinners, department parties, all those people who think they know us." "We know something they don't," Graham said. "We know what we're capable of." "And if someone finds out?" "Then they find out," he shrugged. "I'm 67 years old, Amelia. I'm tired of living for other people's approval." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The weight of expectations, of being the proper couple, the safe choice for dinner invitations and academic social events. "There will be a price," I said. "Yes." He finished his drink, set the glass aside. "There always is, but the price of not doing it was higher." "How do you know?" "Because I was losing you, slowly, year by year. We were becoming roommates who happened to share a bed and a mortgage. The truth of that settled between us like steam from the vents. We had been drifting, hadn't we? Comfortable, but not connected. Familiar, but not intimate. Now I feel like I'm married to a woman I want to discover all over again. He reached for my hand. A woman who surprises me, who challenges me, who isn't afraid to want things. I leaned against him, felt his arm come around my shoulders. The woman in the steam last night, she's still here. Good. He pressed his lips to my hair. Don't let her disappear. I won't. I meant it. But you have to promise me something too. Anything. Don't go back to being the man who's afraid of what he wants. Don't retreat into research and theory and safety. I promise. 6 months later, I catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror and see her again, the woman from the mountain bathhouse. She's still there in my eyes, direct and unashamed. We never returned to that stone sanctuary, though Graham kept the rental paperwork in his desk drawer. A reminder, he said, of what's possible when you stop being afraid of yourself. The changes weren't dramatic. No one at the faculty dinner last month would have noticed anything different about Professor Graham's wife. But I felt the difference in how I moved through the room, how I listened to conversations, how I touched Graham's arm when he spoke. I felt the difference in our bedroom, too, where we'd finally learned to ask for what we wanted instead of settling for what was safe. Any regrets? Graham asked me this morning over coffee, the same question he'd posed that first dawn. About the experience? Never. I poured myself more coffee, noticed how the morning light caught the silver in my hair. About waiting so long to have it? Every day? He laughed. We can't change the timing. No, but we can change what comes next. What did you have in mind? I showed him the brochure I'd found online. Another retreat, this one in the desert. Different parameters, new discoveries waiting. Interested? I asked. He studied the photographs of adobe walls and private courtyards, his expression thoughtful. Then he looked at me with the same hunger I'd seen that first night in the mountains. When do we leave? I smiled, feeling the woman in the mirror smile back. She'd found her courage in steam and shadows, in the touch of strangers and the gaze of her husband. She'd learned that betrayal could be an act of love, that boundaries existed to be explored, not feared. Most importantly, she'd learned that after 47 years of marriage, she was still capable of becoming someone new. The desert could wait. We had all the time in the world to discover what else we might become.